Hi, I'm Heidi Villegas with Healing Harvest Homestead, and I'm getting ready to cook some beans from scratch. And I do this all the time, and I just thought I would go ahead and show you how to. And the reason I'm thinking that this might be a great video for people is because I've been asked so many times, how do you cook dry beans? You know, just the beans that you get in the bulk sections of the store, or you can buy them in little packages. And there is a trick to it. Like I said, I've done this for so many years, and there's definitely a trick. So we're gonna dive into the step-by-steps of how to cook dry beans, and subscribe if you like this, and like it if you like this video. Anyway, a couple things I want to talk about here are traditional food cooking systems or directions, basically. If you don't do certain things with your dried beans, then you're going to end up with flatulence or gas and bloating, all of those uncomfortable things that happen when some of us eat beans. And I'm one of them. So I have struggled through many different preparations of beans and been very uncomfortable afterwards. But my husband loves beans. Also, beans are amazing food storage items, and you can can them, you can freeze them after you prepare them, and they're wonderful foundation foods for your food storage and just your general cooking on a day-to-day basis. They're full of protein, they're full of fiber, and they're full of vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. They're just an amazing food source for people. So you can't just take your dry beans and start cooking them. That's not the way it works. So the way you want to do it is the way most cultures do it around the world, and that is they will soak their beans first. And I actually started this pot of beans, or this bowl of beans, yesterday, and I've already rinsed them a couple of times, but I just want to show you this because I'm getting ready to pour them into my bean pot. So what you want to do is you pour your beans into a large bowl, and then you cover them with about 2 to 3 inches of water, depending on, you know, some beans will puff up large and some beans will absorb just a little water. And then you pour in some vinegar. I don't really ever measure, but I would say I probably poured about a 1/4 cup of vinegar into this soaking liquid for the first soak. And then when I rinse them after that, I don't put more vinegar in, I just let them soak. But you see these bubbles on top? So this is going on the 3rd rinse here before I pour them in the bean pot. But what normally happens is you get these frothy bubbles on top as they soak for a few hours. And what that is that's the phytic acid being released from the shells of the beans. And that's the portion that it's called an anti-nutrient. That's the portion that binds to minerals inside your gut and actually decreases the nutrition of the bean. So you want to get rid of the bad stuff so the good stuff can get to work in your body. And the way you do that is to soak your beans first. I've soaked my beans up to 3 days before with no detrimental effects. What ends up happening is you really just start the fermentation process. They don't go bad, but you just rinse them every single day if you do that. And the longer you soak the beans, the less likely you're going to have bloating, gas, flatulence, those uncomfortable feelings. So now I'm going to go ahead and give these beans another rinse, and I'm going to pour them into my bean pot. When I do this, I just rinse them around with my hands. Look at those, see the bubbles are still coming up. I really should let these soak for another day, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to get them started. I feel like black beans aren't quite as detrimental to our digestive systems as other beans like pintos and things like that. So these will be fine, just fine to go into the bean pot. So here, this is actually a traditional Mexican bean pot. This was made in Hidalgo, Mexico, and I just love it. It's by a company called Ancient Cookware. It is lead-free, and I love using this for cooking my beans. But you can also use a Dutch oven. In fact, I've used a Dutch oven for years and years and years. And you can use a cast iron, or you can use an enamel Dutch oven. Both are just fine. And if you don't have that, you can even use a stock pot. So they all work just fine. The reason I love cooking in this bean pot though is because the beans never boil over. So going to go ahead and add my beans to the bean pot. Another thing I've noticed too is the cooking time in the bean pot is shorter. All right, so let me just show you here. The beans are right there at the bottom of the pot, and I'm going to go ahead and fill this pot about this up to the rounded part of the shoulder, right below the handles. And I'm going to go ahead and let them simmer for about 2 hours. And by simmer, what I mean by my simmer when I do my beans, it's not one of those little simmers. It's more of a, it's not a rolling boil, but it's kind of in between a simmer and a boil, basically. And that's because you don't want your beans sticking to the bottom of the pot. If you have to stir, I use a wooden spoon, and I use a wooden spoon whether I'm using a Dutch oven or whether I'm using my clay pot. All right, so let's get these going on the stove. All right, before I get them going on the stove and before I add my water, I need to add some other ingredients, so hold on tight. So let's go ahead and season the beans. You don't want to cook your beans without giving them some seasoning. And I'm really simple. These are just typical Mexican spices or other cultural spices. They're really great. So an onion. You can use a half an onion or a whole onion. I don't bother to mince it down because what happens is as the beans cook, the onion just kind of disintegrates in there. I've got some peeled garlic cloves. You can use 3 to 5, 6. I've got 6 here. And I've got cumin, just a generous, I'd say this is probably a couple of tablespoons of cumin. And then another thing I've started adding recently is black cumin, which I just love. I buy it in bulk. And I try to make sure that we get some of this every single day. So I'm gonna just add a couple spoonfuls of the black cumin to my beans, and we're going to call it good. Now, in case you're wondering about peeling garlic, which really is a hassle, if you don't have a great little tool, I'm just going to share this little tip with you. Is you take a garlic clove that's, it's got the papery cover on it. You don't want that. And this is a handy little silicone garlic skin remover. You just go ahead and put the garlic cloves inside there and roll them really good. And look at that. It comes out and the paper just comes right off, or it's already off. I'm just going to add that one to the pot, and might as well add this one too. So basically what I'm adding to my pot right now is pretty much a whole clove of garlic, or a whole bulb of garlic. All right, I'm going to fill this with water and I'm going to get it on the stove. If you're using a Dutch oven, I actually will turn the heat up high or medium high and let it get started boiling, and then I turn it down and I turn it to the simmer setting. For a clay pot, I don't ever turn the heat up over medium, and then I'll turn it down to the simmer part on the stove too, and we're just going to let this cook for a good 2 to 3 hours, and we'll check in with the beans in the meantime. I just wanted to show you the bean pot. This is with the beans. I just put them in here. They're just barely starting. As you can see, there's no boiling water yet, but I wanted to show you about how high I have the water. It's about, it's about down to here in the bean pot. So I could have used a little less water, but I'm gonna go ahead and start here. And one of the ways the bean pot works versus a Dutch oven is because this is curved right here. You can see that deep curve. The beans don't boil over, which is really nice. I'm just gonna put this on top. All right, we're gonna let this cook, and these are going to be delicious. Okay, so I thought we would do a check-in. It's been about 2 hours since I put the beans on, and you can see how far the water has evaporated off. I like my beans really soft, and I can kind of tell they're getting there quickly. The onions are, as you can see, are breaking down, so that's good. They're not quite as soft as I would like them to be. I can just kind of tell by what I'm feeling with my wooden spoon here. I'm going to go ahead and let them continue simmering, probably for another hour. Yep, and then we'll check in. I might have to add a little bit more water. But there you go. That's how they're doing in the bean pot 2 hours later. And look, one thing I want you to notice is there is no boil over at all. They just, this clay pot is it's superior to anything I've ever used to cook beans with. But keep in mind, again, you can always do beans with your Dutch oven, a stock pot, etc. All right, we'll come back in a little while. All right, the beans are done, and I am now going to put them into a bowl and put them in the fridge because we're not going to eat these tonight. Actually, if I wanted to serve these, you can serve these right in the clay pot, and they're just delicious and they look beautiful on your table. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, how to cook dried beans from scratch in a clay pot. You could have used a Dutch oven too, and I hope you'll give this a shot. Please subscribe to my channel and like this if you did like it, and I will see you in the next video. I'm Heidi Villegas with Healing Harvest Homestead.